You know, for the past decade, Papua New Guinea's government has been navigating some seriously turbulent political waters, and it's all leading to a critical showdown. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack the two very different crises that have brought the nation right to this crossroads. Let's dive in.
It all really boils down to this one simple but super powerful question. How do you actually fire a sitting prime minister in Papua New Guinea? It's not nearly as straightforward as you might think, and the answer is absolutely key to understanding everything that's going on right now.
And that mechanism is called a vote of no confidence, or VONC for short. Now, on paper, it looks like pure democracy in action. You get 56 members of parliament to agree, and you can replace the leader. But in reality, it's a high-stakes political battlefield, and it's about to be put to the test all over again.
All right, so here's what we've got on tap. We're going to start inside that political pressure cooker. Then we'll look at the two very different eras that got us here. We'll meet the challenger, size of the choice facing the country, and finally, we'll map out three possible futures for 2025.
Okay, so first, let's really set the scene here. This upcoming vote of no confidence, expected in October 2025, isn't just another tick on the political calendar. It's really the boiling point after years and years of instability and some really deep governance problems. And here's the thing you've got to understand about these votes. They are almost never decided by debates over policy. Nope. They are won and lost in the back rooms through intense lobbying where loyalty is, well, let's just say it's flexible. And often, a challenge gets defeated not because the government has the numbers, but because its lawyers find some tiny procedural technicality to get the whole thing thrown out of court.
Okay, so to really get what's happening now, we've got to rewind a bit to the time of former Prime Minister Peter O'Neill. His era was defined by two things: massive spending, thanks to the country's first big LNG project, and a direct assault on the rule of law itself. This was a true crisis of legality.
Just look at that number, 23.8%. That was the budget deficit as a slice of the entire country's economy in just 5 years. It's been called the worst in PNG's history, and it's what sent the national debt soaring.
And where did a huge chunk of that debt come from? Well, it came from this super controversial offshore loan from the bank UBS. The whole deal was so questionable, it actually sparked a full-blown royal commission, which eventually led to criminal charges against O'Neill himself for allegedly lying under oath during that inquiry.
And this is the perfect example of what we mean by a crisis of legality. When the government's own anti-corruption team, Task Force Sweep, turned around and called for O'Neill's arrest, the task force was just dismantled, gone. When the courts ordered it be brought back, its funding was choked off. You see the pattern? That, plus using state force against student protesters in 2016, it painted a clear picture of a government actively working against the very institutions designed to keep it in check.
So that was then. Now let's jump to the current administration and see how things have changed. James Marape swept into power in 2019 with this big promise to take back PNG. But his time in office has been marked by a totally different kind of crisis. Not about legality, but about basic functionality.
So this is the story you'll hear from Prime Minister Marape himself. His whole narrative is that his team is the cleanup crew, fixing the economic mess his predecessor left behind and getting the country back on track.
But when you look at the numbers, you see a slightly different picture. Despite all the talk of growth, the national debt has just kept climbing. It's gone from 40% of GDP under O'Neill to an estimated 54% today. So that financial pressure, it's actually gotten worse. Okay, so the Marape government basically put all its eggs in one basket, a huge new resource project called Papua LNG. The original sticker price was a cool $12 billion US. That was the number that was supposed to bring a whole new wave of wealth to the country.
But then, the bids from construction companies started coming in, and the new price tag? $18 billion. I mean, that's a gigantic jump, and it completely changed the game.
So now you've got this massive $6 billion problem. A 50% cost blowout has slammed the brakes on the entire project. The final investment decision is totally stalled, and with it, the big economic comeback the government had bet everything on.
And if there was one moment that just defined this entire era, it was the riots in January 2024. This wasn't some big political protest. It started because the police themselves were protesting because of a payroll error. Their pay was messed up, and that tiny glitch spiraled into chaos, looting, and a complete collapse of law and order. It was a shocking look at a state where the basic systems were just breaking down.
All right, so all of this sets up the big choice facing Papua New Guinea. A choice between two very different types of failure, really. And then there's the challenger, who says he offers a way out. So let's just put these two eras right next to each other. Under O'Neill, the crises felt very top-down, right? Shutting down an anti-corruption body using state force. Under Marape, the crises have been more about a collapse from the bottom up, the security forces failing on their own, or a total failure to get a huge economic project off the ground.
And this is the single most important takeaway. The whole nature of the risk in PNG has shifted. O'Neill's era, that was a crisis of legality, a leader who seemed to be actively undermining the law. Marape's era, that's a crisis of functionality, a state where the core systems themselves just aren't working properly anymore.
So, in the other corner, who's the alternative? His name is Alan Bird. He's the governor of East Sepik Province. And here's the kicker. He's been put forward as the alternate prime minister at least 6 times in previous attempts to change the government. So he's seen as this persistent, constant challenger. But of course, the government has a comeback, and it's a pretty smart one. They aren't accusing him of being corrupt. Instead, they're going after his competence. They claim that his provincial government failed to spend over 100 million kina of its own budget. The question they want voters to ask is, if he can't even manage a provincial budget, how's he going to manage the entire country?
So, this all leads up to the big vote. It's high stakes, for sure. So let's break down the 3 most likely ways this could all play out, and what each one really means for PNG.
First up, the most likely outcome, the vote fails, and Marape hangs on. But he'll be on a very short leash, under huge pressure to finally land that LNG deal and get law and order under control. Scenario 2, the vote actually succeeds. Alan Bird becomes prime minister. That brings instant change, but also a ton of short-term uncertainty and a whole lot of pressure on him to prove he can actually run the place. And then there's the wild card, Scenario 3, an early election. It's the least likely, but it would cause the most chaos, delaying everything. And that really leaves us with the big question. As Papua New Guinea's fundamental crisis shifts from one of legality to one of functionality, the country is standing at a major crossroads. The path it takes from here is going to define its future for a long, long time to come.